Hey guys, welcome to our weekly news show here on Backstage with Millionaires. I'm Caleb, your host, and we've got an exciting show planned for you guys this week, so let's jump right in. 2021 has been a pretty incredible year for India's startup ecosystem. A lot has happened. India saw 41 startup unicorns this year, and that's just at the time of us filming this video in the middle of December. Probably by the time you're watching this video, that number will have increased. That's more than 3 startup unicorns every single month, and believe it or not, that's more startup unicorns this year than in the entire preceding decade. But of course, none of this would have been possible without the support of VCs, who poured $23 billion into India's startup ecosystem in 2021. And that's just counting from January to September. Once we get the numbers from the third quarter of the financial year of 2022, it's very likely that that number will have increased above $30 billion. Now, coming to Backstage with Millionaires, we made 50 Indian startup news videos this year, starting the year off with number 50 and wrapping things up with number 100. That's 50 weeks of Indian startup news, 365 days. Now, obviously, there's way too much for us to cover in one video. We couldn't talk about every single topic that happened between January and December, but we thought it would be nice to reflect on the top 10 things that happened in India's startup ecosystem this year, in 2021. Coming up right after this. So starting things off at number 10, we witnessed this really interesting phenomenon where young Indian startups were acquiring traditional businesses that had been around for decades. For example, 5-year-old stock trading unicorn Groww acquired the mutual funds business of Indiabulls, which is a 21-year-old company, for 175 crore rupees. We also saw India's only online pharmacy unicorn, Pharmeasy, acquiring a majority stake in India's largest diagnostic solutions provider, Thyrocare, which is a 25-year-old company, in a deal worth 4,546 crore rupees. And this was the first time that a startup had acquired a publicly listed company in India ever. Now, carrying on with this theme of young companies buying up old ones, let's move on to number 9 now, because we have to talk about Byju's acquisition spree. This massive edtech startup began the year with the billion-dollar acquisition of 33-year-old Akash Institute, giving them access to India's thriving offline education sector. Now, Byju's is definitely not the most popular startup in India these days, but in spite of this, they went on to buy 9 more companies throughout the year, spending more than $2.5 billion across all of these deals, and that's including Akash. But do keep in mind here that that's just the amount that they've disclosed. They've kept some of these acquisitions pretty close to their chest, and so we aren't 100% sure just how much they've spent this year, but it's definitely a lot. Moving on to number 8 now, we have CoinDCX and CoinSwitch Kuber, which became India's first and second ever crypto unicorns respectively. Now, at the time of us filming this video, there is still a lot of doubt and uncertainty surrounding India's crypto and blockchain industries, and everyone's kind of just waiting for the government of India's cryptocurrency bill, but in the meantime, there's been a lot of enthusiasm and innovation from India's many crypto and blockchain startups. One great example of this is Polygon, a layer 2 protocol for building and connecting Ethereum-compatible blockchain networks. Now, like most blockchain projects, Polygon is built by a decentralized team of people from all around the world, but it began its journey in India, and many of the core team members of the project are Indian. Coming in at number 7 now, we have Skyroot Aerospace, the first ever Indian startup to successfully test a rocket engine last year in 2020. And then this year, they set another record too, by becoming the first Indian startup to successfully test a cryogenic rocket engine, taking India one step closer to launching privately built rockets into space, the same way that American companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin are in the United States. Now, of course, Skyroot Aerospace isn't the only Indian space tech startup trying to exit the stratosphere. There are a bunch of other companies working on rockets and satellites at this very moment, like Agnikul Cosmos, or Bellatrix Aerospace, which is building a space taxi for satellites. Next up at number 6, we have the $2.6 million defamation lawsuit filed by White Hat Jr. against Pradeep Punia, and we're including that on this list because it really backfired against the startup. People were already upset about the unethical things that were happening in India's edtech space, but this lawsuit was gasoline on that fire. Eventually, White Hat Jr. dropped the lawsuit, Karan Bajaj resigned from his role as CEO, although some would argue that that was unrelated, and Byju's quietly rebranded White Hat Jr. to Byju's Future School. Moving on to number 5 now, let's talk about Ola Electric and their plans for India's EV space. They announced their S1 and S1 Pro electric scooters back on India's Independence Day and started taking orders in October. During the first 2 days of this booking period, Ola received orders worth 1,100 crore rupees. That's more than 80,000 scooters. To put that number into perspective, in 2020, just 25,598 electric two-wheelers were sold in India. In other words, Ola single-handedly tripled the size of India's electric two-wheeler market. And on top of that, they started work on what was supposed to be the world's largest electric scooter factory before Simple Energy announced that they were going to build one that was even bigger. Coming in at number 4 now, let's talk about grocery delivery for a second. Thanks to two 19-year-old Stanford dropouts building a startup called Zepto, 10-minute grocery delivery is becoming more and more commonplace in India's metros. Following Zepto's lead, Growfers, which has been around since 2013, rebranded themselves to Blinkit, ensuring that everybody knew that they were as serious about superfast delivery as Zepto. And these kinds of high-speed deliveries are also happening now with startups like Swiggy Instamart and Dunzo, too. Next up at number 3, we have the fastest Indian startup to become a unicorn, entering the club in just 6 months. We're talking, of course, about Mensa Brands. It's a Thrasio-style startup that acquires scalable D2C brands and then upgrades their marketing, product development, and supply chain management to supercharge their growth within the Mensa portfolio. And Mensa Brands isn't the only Thrasio-style startup in India. We've been seeing these companies pop up all through 2021. Moving on to number 2 now, let's talk a little bit about IPOs, because before 2021, the term Indian startup IPO wasn't really something that you ever heard anybody in the ecosystem talking about, but now it's commonplace. And arguably the most successful Indian startup IPO of 2021 has been Nykaa's. Anybody who got allotment in this IPO saw their investment double when Nykaa hit the stock market, and it also made Falguni Nayar, the Nykaa of Nykaa, India's wealthiest self-made woman. Now, if you want to know more about the story of Nykaa, we actually made a video detailing the life of Falguni Nayar. You can check that video out up here. It didn't really get as much love as we were expecting or hoping for, so if it sounds like something that would be interesting for you, then definitely check it out. And finally, coming in at number 1, but continuing to talk about IPOs, let's talk about the first Indian startup IPO of 2021, Zomato's. They were the first Indian startup unicorn ever to go public. But what a lot of people don't realize is that when the company actually decided to go public, it wasn't from a position of strength. They were going to IPO to survive amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Eventually, things did turn around, and Zomato probably didn't need to go public. It wasn't out of necessity anymore, but they decided to continue with their plans anyways. And despite the fact that they were a loss-making company, everybody benefited from this IPO. It was oversubscribed, new investors grew their money, and old investors saw massive returns. This success encouraged other Indian startups to announce their own IPOs, and many of them have since filed their DRHPs or even gone and filed for their IPO. So that was 2021 in a nutshell, or at least for India's startup ecosystem. I hope that you enjoyed the video. I hope that you learned something from it as always, and I'd love to get your thoughts on what 2022 holds. What trends should we expect to see? Which startups are going to thrive? Leave your thoughts on that in a comment down below, and I also wanted to say thanks to everybody who's come along with us for this journey. We've had so much fun covering all of the news, the startup stories, all of the moments that have happened in the ecosystem throughout the last year, and we couldn't have done it without you. So thank you guys so much for watching this year of Backstage with Millionaires, and I will see you in the next one.